Member for Nedlands.
Mr Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker, I proudly stand in this place representing the families and businesses of Nedlands. It is a privilege and honour to be their voice. I note that I follow several luminaries in our state's history as the member for Nedlands: Sir Norbert Keenan, Sir Charles Court and Richard Court. They were all men of great substance, principle and sound judgment. They were all highly regarded not only for their passionate support of free enterprise, but also for their vision for Western Australia and the commitment to the electorate. My hope in this place is that I will equally serve the people of Nedlands as they have been supported in the past. Looking back on history, I am reminded that great men and women built this state, including men like my parliamentary predecessors. Men who believed in free enterprise, men who had a vision and who were not afraid to step out to create it. I'm here today because my great-great-grandfather was such a man. His name was Patrick Marmion, and in 1841, at the ripe old age of 25, he migrated from Northern Ireland to Fremantle. Whilst Fremantle and Perth had only been settled for 12 years before Patrick arrived, his energy, drive and commercial nous must have suited the times. Officially, ship's records list his occupation as a clerk, with one historian suggesting that he arrived as an indentured servant. Even so, he managed to develop a successful merchant business in Fremantle, along with a whaling station off the coast close to where the suburb of Padbury now exists. He died in 1855, leaving his wife Charlotte and son William Edward Marmion to continue the family business. His son William went on to make his mark in other ways. He was the first member for the seat of Fremantle and was the Minister for Lands in the first Forest Cabinet. He served in the Legislative Council from 1870 until 1890, when he moved into the Legislative Assembly. William Edward Marmion had a reputation for being honest and clear-sighted, and was an outspoken supporter of Fremantle as a gateway to the state. He was not afraid to stand up on behalf of his constituents. During the 1870s to 1890s, when Albany's King George Sound and other hubs threatened Fremantle's position as WA's major port, William Marmion fought hard, along with other Fremantle businessmen of the day, to get the government to build a much improved long jetty, assuring Fremantle's place as our state's premier port facility. He also argued to retain the railway workshops in Fremantle rather than have them moved to Midland Junction. And in his support for John Cood's plan to develop Fremantle's harbour on the coast, as opposed to the mouth of the Swan River, he took on some formidable opponents when he reportedly criticised and bullied the engineers who supported C.Y. O'Connor's alternative plan. It's interesting that now, more than 100 years later, the very nature and location of Fremantle Port is again on the agenda as the state looks at its future import and export tonnages bound to or from the Perth metropolitan area. We can be proud of our heritage and must learn from our history. My pledge to the people of Nedlands is, like all those statesmen before me, I will energetically defend and champion their needs, even in the face of great opposition. Incidentally, I've also read that William Edward Marmion was regarded by his fellow parliamentarians as being somewhat lacking in tact. This piece of information, not surprisingly, was never passed down to his ancestors through the family historians. However, in this regard, I have to say that this is one trait of his that I plan not to emulate. Fortunately, I am surrounded by many good people, including my wife Caitlin, who I have no doubt will remind me of this pledge in the months and years to come. It is to these same good people that I owe a debt of gratitude. Thanks to their efforts and support, I survived the rigours of pre-selection and a nail-bitingly close election. I wish to now publicly record my thanks to them, along with the hundreds of people who supported me through this process. I was amazed and humbled by the people who came forward to help me. To the people who manned my campaign office, to those who door-knocked over 7,000 homes with me, to those who worked on booths and scrutineered, I say a heartfelt thank you. I would not even considered running for the seat of Nedlands without the support of my family, my wife Caitlin and my 5 children, Brittany, Olivia, Richard, Trent and Kezia. My parents, Betty and Dick Marmion, who are here today, were less enthusiastic about my possible entry into politics. Their observation was that politics makes your hair prematurely grey, or even white in some cases. I pay a particular vote of thanks to Peter Collier, the North Metropolitan Member for the Legislative Council. He was my campaign manager and devoted an enormous amount of time and energy into my campaign. At the risk of leaving out the names of some 300 people that worked on my campaign, I'd like to single out Barry Ireland, Des Wells, Ross Roberts, Del Wilmot for the time they devoted. I'd also like to acknowledge the advice and grounding I received from experienced campaigners Richard Court, Liz Constable and my mother's dear friend June Craig. Most of all, however, I'd like to thank the electors of the seat of Nedlands, people who have placed their trust in me. I regard it as a great honour and a responsibility to represent you, and I sincerely thank you for the opportunity. The Nedlands electorate is a special place. It is bounded by the Swan River to the south and south-east, Thomas Street and Kings Park to the east, Lock Street and Brockway Road to the west, and Cambridge Street to the north. Within its boundaries are the suburbs of Crawley, Daglish, Dalkeith, Jollymont, Karrakatta, Nedlands, Shenton Park and Subiaco, along with parts of Claremont, Floreat, Mount Claremont, Wembley and West Leederville. Major features within the electorate include Subiaco Oval, Karrakatta Cemetery, Sir Charles Garden Hospital, Sir John of God Subiaco Hospital, Princess Margaret's Children's Hospital, King Edward Memorial Hospital and the University of Western Australia. It also has more than 8 kilometres of Swan River foreshore with some wonderful recreational walks and river parks. The electorate is home to a wide cross-section of people. We are generally a very happy group of people, although not without our challenges. Nedlands has more than 6,000 residents over the age of 65. That's nearly 14% of its population. This compares to 11.8% for the rest of Western Australia. With a median age of 40, Nedlands has one of the highest age profiles in Australia. Already my constituents have given me a clear message. One of the principal state issues that concerns them continues to be lack of timely access to hospitals for emergency care and reduction in the waiting period for those requiring important surgery. I am pleased that the new Liberal government has an experienced and very capable person in Dr Kim Hames, who as the Minister for Health recognises the need to address these pressing concerns. I will work hard to keep this issue high on the government's agenda. Provision of aged care places is another major issue for the electorate of Nedlands. With a much larger proportion of elderly residents than all other electorates in Western Australia, we are already facing the problem of loved ones needing residential aged care accommodation, having to be located in distant metropolitan suburbs, unfamiliar to them and far from close relatives. Exacerbating this problem is the need to upgrade and rebuild most of these existing aged care facilities. Sadly, in many of these facilities, renovation is simply not an option. Rebuilding is usually the only answer, but this requires locating residents to temporary accommodation, often out of the suburb. This places enormous stress on the residents and their families. Solutions are not easy. They call for tough decisions. Land is a somewhat scarce commodity in the western suburbs. Not surprisingly, councils and developers want to maximise their return on investment, and any land that is available is invariably used for residential development. And this is where our Nedlands heritage and history provides the background for our future visions. We need to be mindful of the ever-diminishing residential aged care places in our electorate and what that means to us as a community. Not supporting our older residents will greatly diminish our social fabric and intergenerational family links, sever the very roots of our community tree, and we simply will not have a strong community. Now is the time to plan for our future. Now is the time to identify suitable sites for new facilities to be built and existing facilities upgraded. Just as we plan for schools, hospitals, public open space and other essential community infrastructure, we need to assure our older residents we really do care. Now is the time to work on creating a future network of residential aged care sites throughout the whole metropolitan area, including Nedlands. The generation that is now being affected by this challenge deserves better. They served our communities and defended our country. There are some horror stories out there, and anyone who has tried of late to find care for ageing parents will know exactly what I'm talking about. It is un-Australian and it needs to be changed. Equally, we need to invest in our future, our younger generations, parents with families. For them, the deteriorating standards of our state school facilities is an issue, which is driving them towards the private education system. This concerns me greatly. As a parent, I have chosen to use the state primary schools. I have found the teachers at both Nedlands Primary School and Hollywood Primary School to be very dedicated to the learning needs of my children. It gives me great comfort that in the first few weeks of the Liberal government, the Premier and Education Minister have already improved the conditions and pay rates of our valued state school teachers. This is a great first step, but we now have to work hard to improve the standard of school infrastructure. It is evident in my electorate that older schools are now run down and in desperate need of upgrades. Sadly, the once temporary demountable classrooms have become permanent reminders of quick-fix options with no thought for the future. No increase in maintenance expenditure during the past 8 years has meant the burden to cover the shortfall rests on the shoulders of parent associations. Whilst parents in some suburbs may be able to fund school infrastructure needs, this is certainly not the case in all suburbs. I am advised that the current written-down depreciated value of Western Australia's schools is conservatively about $7 billion. Even using the Taxation Department's allowable depreciation rate of 2%, this equates to an annual maintenance expenditure requirement of $140 million. Yet the total funds allocated per year by the previous government during the past 8 years was only $60 million. I recognise there is not an endless pot of money available for government to allocate. However, this simply means that we need to focus on the priorities and ensure that we get the best value from our taxpayers' dollar. Although well established, Nedlands is not without its transport planning and infrastructure issues. We have some good roads, a train line and bus routes. Yet we can make our transport a whole lot better. Integrating these modes of travel and introducing a network of safe bicycle and pedestrian paths will increase our community's faith in our transport system. With 5 children, I am particularly keen to have safe environments that encourage them to use our footpaths and bike paths without fear of possible collision with vehicles. Again, it's important that we have a vision and a plan for the future that takes into account all travel options, including passenger cars, commercial vehicles, buses, trains, bicycles and pedestrians. The areas of transport planning and infrastructure are a particular passion of mine. I come from a family of engineers. I have a Bachelor of Engineering and a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Western Australia. These have stood me in good stead through 24 years in public service, starting as a civil engineer at Main Roads and finishing as a Director of Premier Richard Court's office. My time as an engineer in Main Roads allowed me to gain valuable experience in designing, planning, costing and constructing roads throughout the whole state. This included being posted in the divisions of West Kimberley, Bunbury, Narrogin, Kalgoorlie and Perth. At Main Roads, I also had the privilege of reporting directly to some great leaders and engineers, including our current Governor, Dr Ken Michael, Dr Jim Gill, current CEO of Watercorp, and Don Aitken, who was Commissioner of Main Roads for over 20 years and Chancellor of the University of WA. For the past 6 years, I have managed, in partnership, a successful consulting business which focused on strategic planning of urban developments and the economic assessment of major government infrastructure projects. My most recent work included developing business cases covering major state infrastructure projects such as the Perth Arena, Fire and Emergency Services volunteer and career fire stations, schools and train stations. With this background, I am passionate about developing a vision, plans and policy that meet the needs of our state now and well into the future. One of my greatest frustrations is the reactionary planning and implementation of major infrastructure projects, particularly transport projects, in a vacuum of any overall master plan or visionary context? Where is our draft 2050 passenger rail network, our 2050 port network, our 2050 land use plan for industry, our 2050 rail and road freight networks linking major industry? It is not easy to develop such plans, but the first step is easy. You just have to say you're going to do it. Allocate the resources and start. It is nearly 50 years since the Stevenson-Hepburn Plan was prepared. From this plan came the Metropolitan Region Scheme and a planned road network. It gave the metropolitan area a development framework. It is well past the time for this plan to be looked at again and a completely new start made. Since my pre-selection, I have often been asked, why have I chosen to enter politics and why Nedlands? The why Nedlands part is easy. Nedlands is well and truly part of my family history. My grandmother and father lived in Nedlands in the 40s, and my father and aunt both obtained their first degrees at the University of Western Australia. I have travelled and resided all over Western Australia, from Bunbury to Derby, but I've returned to my heritage and have now lived in Nedlands area for more than 20 years. I'm a passionate advocate for Nedlands and for delivering a plan to assure its future is as strong as its past. And why politics? Well, that one is slightly harder to answer. Choosing to stand as a candidate and entering Parliament is a challenge for anyone, and I've always admired those members from all sides of politics that have taken on this challenge. Whilst it is an enormous privilege to represent your electorate, it also carries with it enormous responsibility to make decisions and judgments on significant issues for the state. I've been blessed with a career path that, by chance, has given me a broad experience in all levels of the public service. I believe I have much to offer the people of Nedlands and Western Australia, and it is my duty, as well as my passion, to utilise my knowledge and experience in the most important forum, the West Australian Parliament. Growing up, I learned from personal experience the value of hard work, determination, and above all, the importance of a team approach to getting the job done. As well as reinforcing the need to work hard and do your best, my parents also instilled in me the values of honesty and integrity, and the need to give back and play an active part in the local community. For most of my life, I have done this. I'm the current president of the YM Coastal City Hockey Club, Chairman of Engineers Australia's Centre for Engineering Leadership and Management, and Chairman of the Engineering Excellence Awards for Western Australia. I'm also heavily involved in my children's sports and education because, like many of us, my family means the world to me. They keep me grounded in reality and provide me with a reason for ensuring that decisions I make do not adversely affect their future. My wife, Caitlin, and I believe strong family values are vital to the social fabric of our local community. It's important to me that my children grow up learning the lessons that I did. Mr Speaker, can I have extension, please?
Extension granted.
And that they understand the value of hard work, the benefits of teamwork, the importance of honesty and respect, and the joy that comes from getting involved with the community and giving to others. They also need to understand that we all have a role to play in our local community. I'm very fortunate because I can remember the time when anyone could get a hospital bed, when education, not funding, was the issue for our public schools, and when our local roads were safe. I want my children to experience the same things I did, and this can only occur when we have a government that works to meet the challenges of the future to benefit us all. I believe that if we want to make a difference, we have to play our part. I want to play my part in a government that sets the bar high, a government that looks to the future with courage and resolve to create a vision that all communities can strive for, a government that plans thoroughly to create realistic and intelligent policy that benefits us all. Policies that will more efficiently deliver health services to the whole community and reduce the time patients spend in emergency waiting rooms and on surgery waiting lists. Policies that allows aged care to coexist with other residential properties in all of our suburbs to allow families to stay close to one another for a lifetime. Policies that look at the optimal size and location of schools, taking in the future demographics of our state and future educational requirements. Policies that consider the operational life cycle of schools and fund them accordingly. Policies that look to our future transport needs, including seaports, major freight routes, rail links, bus routes, cycle paths and walkways. Policies that address reactionary town planning by setting a vision for the future for our urban development that will set the infrastructure goals for the metropolitan area for the next 50 years. In closing, I wish to affirm my belief that the fundamental role of government is to facilitate the freedom of the individual and to provide services for the protection, safety and benefit of all individuals. In making decisions regarding what is best for the state, we must never forget that our state is made up of many individuals, some of whom require additional support due to their particular physical, financial or social circumstances. Laws, regulations and other red tape are necessary, but we should work hard in this parliament to make sure that where possible we keep legislation simple, unambiguous and to a minimum. Mr Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker, it is my hope and desire that I will have the wisdom in this House to make decisions that will be to the greater benefit of the state and, as a consequence, every individual who lives here. Today I have outlined a number of issues that my electorate feels passionate about, but that affect us all. I look forward to working with you, my parliamentary colleagues, to deliver solutions, to create the vision, to develop the plans and to draft the policies that will benefit not only my constituents but our entire state. Thank you, Mr Speaker.